Hi, my name is Alex. I grew up in a small, quiet little town where the nights are long and the winters are a bit harsh. My friends and I often found ourselves seeking adventure to break the monotony of our everyday lives. There was Sam, who was always up for anything, full of energy and curiosity. Oliver, the more reserved of our group, but with a knack for getting us into trouble. And me, always the planner, trying to keep things fun yet safe. One winter evening, we decided to play hide and seek around the fields near the abandoned factory on the edge of town. What was supposed to be a harmless game turned into a nightmare. I still remember that evening clearly. It was one of those cold winter nights where the snow sparkled under the street lights and the cold seemed to seep into your bones. Oliver, Sam, and I had decided to liven up our boredom with a game of hide and seek. The abandoned factory on the edge of town was the perfect place for our game. It was dark, mysterious, and just the kind of place where a thrill-seeking kid could have some fun. Oliver was the seeker first, and he counted while Sam and I sprinted toward the factory. I ducked into a shadowy corner behind some old crates, trying to suppress my laughter. The factory's decaying walls and broken windows made it look like a scene straight out of a horror story, but that was exactly why we found it so enticing. Sam and I parted ways, each finding our own hiding spots. I could hear Oliver's footsteps echoing through the empty building as he searched for us. Time passed, and the game started to drag on. I heard a loud thud from somewhere in the factory, followed by a series of muffled voices. It sounded like Oliver and Sam were having some sort of scuffle. I figure it was part of the game, but when I peeked out from behind my hiding place, I saw something that made my blood run cold. The factory was eerily silent now, the kind of silence that made your skin prickle. I called out for Sam, but there was no response. The factory felt different. There was a heaviness in the air, a sense that something was terribly wrong. I searched frantically, my footsteps echoing off the walls, my calls growing more desperate. I came across the factory's main entrance, but it was locked. Panic set in as I realized that I was trapped inside, and I hadn't seen Sam or Oliver for what felt like an eternity. The silence was shattered by a low, guttural sound that seemed to come from deep within the factory. I moved towards the sound, hoping against hope that it was one of my friends, but what I found was something far more horrifying. A figure emerged from the darkness. It was Sam, or at least it looked like Sam. His eyes were wide and vacant, his movements erratic and unnatural. My heart pounded as he lunged at me, his face twisted into an inhuman mask of terror. I barely managed to dodge him, scrambling through the darkened halls, trying to make sense of the horror unfolding around me. I heard Oliver's voice calling for help, mingled with sounds of a struggle. I ran towards the noise, but the factory seemed to shift and change, turning into a nightmarish labyrinth. When I finally saw Oliver, my heart sank. Sam, or whatever had taken over him, was closing in on him with a terrifying speed. I could see the fear in Oliver's eyes, and before I could even react, Sam grabbed him. The sound of Oliver's scream was one I'll never forget, a chilling cry that seemed to echo through the factory. I wanted to help, but I was paralyzed with fear. I turned and fled, running for the entrance, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I pushed against the door with all my strength, finally breaking free into the cold night. I didn't stop running until I reached the village, where I collapsed in the snow, too exhausted and terrified to speak. The village rallied together for a search, but the factory was as abandoned as ever, and neither Oliver nor Sam was ever found. The factory was locked tight, and despite the search efforts, there was no trace of them. The villagers were concerned but skeptical, and their doubt only deepened the mystery of that night. The factory still stands at the edge of town, a silent sentinel to the horrors that unfolded within its walls. I still find myself haunted by the image of Sam's twisted, monstrous face and the sound of Oliver's scream. No matter how hard I try to forget, that night lingers in my memory like a cold, uncheckable shadow.